Allison here at The Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode of The Bored Housewife. If you guys have been enjoying my podcast, and if you really enjoyed last week's episode, I highly recommend taking some time to click the link in my description that will have an option to my website. From there is a tab called The Bored Housewife. You can sign up for a monthly email newsletter. And also, I'll be starting a blog soon as well. There is a subscription link for that as well, so that you can be notified when a new blog post is out. So, exciting new stuff for me. I hope you guys are interested in it as we kind of start on this new wave of the Bored Housewife podcast, getting more into philosophy and specifically catering it to the housewife. So, kind of piggybacking off of last week's episode, I wanted to get into more of like why the Bored Housewife and what kind of struck me in the beginning and what I've kind of, and why I named it this, and then kind of like why, like how it's changed. So we're going to get into all of that here very shortly. I am sipping this week on a bourbon cocktail. It's made with apple juice and a little bit of a splash of club soda. And, sipping on Four Roses bourbon. So it is very good. It kind of tastes like apple cider a little bit if you're into that. So, but anyways, grab your beverage of choice, your cocktail, whatever that may be, and cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. When I first started the podcast, I called it The Bored Housewife because, like I've talked about quite a bit, I was taken out of the town that I worked in and had my career in, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities in Alabama for what I did working in film and television. So I was thinking bored, and it's kind of funny because like now that I think about it, I grew up pretty much an only child. I have a half brother, but he didn't come along until I was 10. And then at that, he's a boy, so there's only like, I don't really have to share my toys and things like that with him. So I did a lot of like entertaining myself as a child, and I think that's something unique to only children or people in my scenario. It's like, you get really good at playing by yourself because, you don't have a playmate. So, I, never was really bored. If I said I was bored, it was kind of like my mom would always just be like, go find something to do. Like, do you want to help me clean? You want to do this? No, I don't want to do those things. Okay, then go play, So, use your imagination a lot, whatever. So as I got older, like, the concept of bored was never like, I might get a little restless here and there or whatever, but it's not like, I keep myself entertained pretty well with thoughts and things, even in those moments where, like, there's things I know I could be doing and I don't want to do them. I don't ever really feel bored. I just feel kind of like, I get kind of lost in my thoughts. When I was in college, I worked at this restaurant as a hostess, and sometimes, it'd be super busy and all that, but there would be a lot of downtime as well, and I just had to, like, kind of stand up at the front, and so a lot of times I would, like, end up staring out the window. It was so picturesque. It was so beautiful. It was on, Central Park West and 71st Street, so it's, like, right next door to the Museum of Natural History, and then right across the street from Central Park. And it was just so gorgeous, and I would just, like, stare at the window and just, like, think of stuff, or sometimes I would, like, the restaurant itself was very beautiful, and they had all these dishes and things on the wall, so I would just, like, look at the wall and just, like, get off into my thoughts, and like people I worked with would make fun of me because they're like, what are you thinking about while you're up there? And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, like you're always just like staring off into space. I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't know anyone was watching me. That's super embarrassing. Um, so my point is, okay, I don't really get bored. What I realized now is that it wasn't so much boredom that I was feeling, it was a sense of meaninglessness. And so, this week's episode, The Meaningless Housewife, it's not so much that, like, the housewife is, like, meaningless, right? It's more so, like, her, she has kind of this hole, this kind of place of, like, I need to fill it with something that has some, like, substance, some value, and all of that. And I know I talk a lot about that stuff, right? Like, I talk a lot about values and finding meaning, and that's because it's super important, and not just to housewives, to everybody. But, what I've realized is that when you no longer have a job, that you get paid for, like, here's my career, here's this job that I do every day. When you no longer have that to kind of hide behind, it's very obvious where there's meaning lacking in your life. When what your job is like kind of essentially chores, and you do it for your household, you're not doing it necessarily for a paycheck. So I think this would be different from someone who maybe like cleaned houses professionally or something. It's like you kind of start thinking like, what is all of this? And, as I explained last week, there is a lot of value in doing it because of like being supportive of your husband and all of that. But, most of this stuff doesn't take all day long to do, And like some of us might have TV shows we like to watch or whatever. But even that sometimes will only take you so far, right? Like, I do enjoy watching different shows and trying, like, new shows out and stuff. But, um, you know, watching TV can't just be that isn't fulfilling to the point where that's, like, my only sort of stimulation. So, like, what happens when, like, basically you no longer have a reason to put pants on in the morning? And I say that in like the coolest way possible, because as a housewife, you don't have to put any clothes on. Like, you can be in your pajamas all day, you can be in your sweats because you're doing different things, you can be in your workout clothes. Like, there's no reason to like have to get dressed up, right? And as fun as that is, it also is kind of like, where is my life going? What am I doing? And it brings you to this point of, where is there meaning in my life? So I think because like housewives don't have like a normal job, that like they go out into the world and like get a paycheck for. I think this is something that we realized pretty quickly, and I'm obviously speaking for myself. So if you're a housewife and you've never felt like this and you're totally satisfied, like, amazing, like, I'm so happy for you. And with that being said, if you work a job and you do wake up every day and put nice pants on and go to a job, also doesn't mean that, or we work from home now, right? Like, a lot of people work on their computers from home. So it doesn't mean that like you can't have this experience either. I just think that, at least for me, like, as soon as I started staying home and like that was like my only prerogative, it really kind of hit me in the face that like, oh, okay, like, I'm missing something here. And I realized that I put so much of my value and worth into the job that I had. And so I think somebody who has a jobs can definitely bring us meaning, right? And it can be really rewarding and fulfilling to like get a paycheck, and or just get praise from your boss, have something cool happen, whatever. So like, no matter how like interesting or helpful your job might be, there's still other like areas of your life that could be lacking. And I think that because jobs take so much of our time and energy, it just takes a little bit longer. Like, I'm speaking from experience. I didn't realize how much I identified with what I do until I stopped doing it. And then realizing that even though that played such a huge part in my life, there was still something missing there. And even getting married and having that in my life, there was still something missing there. And it's because I put so much of my time and energy into that job. And so I think that, like, it's all really about balance. It's about having what you do every day, what your family life and all of that. But then it's also like, I just think specifically for people who stay at home, or because stay-at-home moms too, like, you have your kids, like, that should be so fulfilling, right? But even with that, it's just like, your kids are only going to be so fulfilling. Like, they're going to take up a lot of your time and energy, but you can't get all of your worth from your children. Like, they have their own lives to live too. So it's like, you got to figure out other stuff that interests you and gives you some sort of purpose every day. And I think it's hard to figure that out because society kind of tells us that it doesn't matter, right? And I think that's where a lot of times the job of being a housewife is really undermined and belittled, because people try to tell us that your job is your identity. What you do is so important. And the more I look at it, like, at a time, I totally agreed with this too. But it's just like, what kind of opportunities maybe did I miss out on, or other life experiences that I could have had if I wasn't, like, chasing something that society kind of, like, projected onto me, And I think this is kind of an issue for a lot of us right now. Like, we go to college with these big dreams and hopes of having really cool jobs and big paychecks and all of the things, right? But then, I don't know about you guys, but at least when I graduated, everything that I had dreamed of changed, and now it's changed again. And that's great. Like, it's cool to have different life experiences and stuff, but this last change was extremely difficult because society has kind of said you're kind of a pointless person or whatever if you decide to stay at home. And especially since I don't have children, at least people with kids get a little bit of a pass because they're like, oh, well, we understand you want to stay home with your kids. But eventually your kids are going to grow up and move out. And, like, what do you do then? Like, go find a job? Like, sure, maybe some people would to fill their time and just give them something interesting to do. But you get what I'm saying here? Like, these things are really sort of trivial things. Like, they can be gone in an instant. They can change so quickly. What you create meaning for, what you, like, surround, like, your values around, those sorts of things aren't just going to necessarily change because you change a location, or because your kids move out, or because you got laid off from a job. Like, these things are actually your identity. They're not these little floating things that are actually extremely fragile. So when I've been thinking about a lot of this and kind of the direction I wanted to take this podcast in, it requires a lot of self-reflection on my part, and thinking in a more broader sense of what this actually means and why it's important to me. And I think the reason why it's become so important to me is because, for one, I am finally realizing that I'm not going back to my career anytime soon. If I go back to it at all, there might be another time in my life that I get into something different. I can go back to it. There's definitely options, right? But, like, there's a part of me too that's even like, I don't know if I want it the same way that I wanted it before. I just remember how much time and sacrifices were made by my coworkers while they were working in the job that I specifically wanted as, like, a writer on a television show. And, they definitely, the time period is maybe like 5 to 7 months that you're working on the show. Shows can be different depending on, like, when they get picked up and different things like that. But we'll say for the sake, like the average person works like 5 months on a show. So you have like the rest of the year, but like 5 months of work isn't necessarily going to like hold you over. Like you're going to end up getting another job. So, depending on where your pay scale is there, on what level of writer you are, you might be able to take longer breaks in between times. But as a writer for a show, like you're really at the mercy of the showrunner. And then the showrunner is at the mercy of the studio on deadlines and how they like make their time. And it's just like I just saw how hard it was for some of them that had families and stuff. Just having to completely sacrifice dinner and bedtime because they had to stay late and write. Getting phone calls in the middle of the night and feeling obligated to take them. Like there's a lot of stuff that maybe with some boundaries, but it's hard to set those boundaries because you're just like at like this is such a coveted job. You don't want to like ruffle any feathers. At the same time, you should be allowed to have a personal life, but I think that is kind of one of those that's like, not while the show's, not while you're working, you don't need a personal life. But anyway, so like for me, it's just like so much has changed and kind of opened my eyes to like what a more meaningful life looks like. And so I just, for one, kind of wanted to get into this because I've had such an awakening as to like what like my time is worth and like what this life on earth is worth, and then also just to be a voice for the housewife. And I just realized like how much it's depicted in media as kind of a negative thing, or kind of like a caricature of like what this time used to be. And like modern day housewives just don't really get, I don't think, the credit that they deserve. And I'm not here being like, oh, we work so hard and our life is just so miserable. Like it's not. Being a housewife is awesome. Like I said before, I can wear my pajamas all day. I can wear sweats all day. I can wear workout gear all day. I don't have to brush my teeth if I don't want to. I can leave my hair in a messy bun all day. I have no Zoom calls to get on. I make my own schedule. Like I can watch TV and like clean the house. Like there's a lot of really awesome things to being a housewife. And I'm actually kind of surprised like more women aren't into it. And I kind of see like people joking and stuff on social media. And I have my theories kind of as to why women don't, but it's like I get it. Like 2 incomes is so much better than just one. But at the same time, like, what is that for? And for me, like, just going and working a job so that we have more money, like, if we can budget and live within our means and, maybe sacrifice buying, like, brand new clothes all the time so that we can, like, go on a cool trip, like, that's what I'll do. Or, like, eating in a little bit more often so we can, like, save a few dollars versus, like, to, like, do something neat versus, like, going out to eat all the time. Like it's about balance and it's about working within your comfort zone. So I can get like if you're somebody who really likes to have nice things and whatever, or sometimes we just get in scenarios where it's just like, okay, I have to get a job now. So like I totally get that. But if you're someone that like has a pretty decent, like you guys could totally live off one income and just kind of adjust here and there. It's really fun being a housewife. There are some like really good benefits to it. But with that being said, I don't feel sorry for us at all. I just think that it's awkward sometimes telling people that and they don't understand necessarily why, and because society seems to think it's a bad thing for someone to stay home and be supportive versus like putting that time and energy into something that doesn't necessarily appreciate them the same way a spouse or your children would. But it's also depicted in media in like a really weird way, as if they are bored, restless, and like maybe even a little resentful sometimes. And not that those things like aren't true. I think like when we don't have meaning and when we're having a hard time figuring out our values and the reasons like why we do things, those feelings are going to come up. Like I 100% feel resentment towards my husband sometimes, and it's totally of my doing, and it's because I don't have my shit in check. Like I am, feeling like having these feelings here and there, and when I take a moment to kind of evaluate them and look at why I'm feeling that way, it usually comes back to just me kind of losing sight of where I'm going and what I'm doing. And instead of taking responsibility for that, projecting it onto him. And so there's just like, a little few things here and there. One of them just living in Okinawa and being so excited to like explore and be in this new place, and then getting on COVID lockdowns like since, January, and things are kind of opening up again, but still not like having free reign. And now, he's going to be going back to the States for a few months for work. And it's just like, I'm going to be stuck here to explore this beautiful place all by myself. Awesome. But that's where it's just like you have to accept what you've been handed and make the most of it. And it'll be hard not having him here, and it'll be, less fun getting to like do stuff without him. But, it's all about perspective in that moment. So my point is, like, yes, some of these things are true, but also some of these things are true with people who have real jobs, like who have jobs that they get paid for. Those feelings aren't just unique to housewives. I think they cover anybody who's in a marriage or has responsibilities. Even in your own job, you could feel those things. So it's like, I don't know why these sorts of things get pinned on housewives as like they're the only people that feel bored, restless, or, resentful at times. I've noticed like with my husband, he gets a lot of meaning through his job. Working in the Marine Corps, like, or being a military member in general, like, I don't know if there is quite a higher like level of pride you could get, because you're taking on something that is such a sacrifice, not just for yourself but like for your family that you make as well. And so like there's just this like pride of being able to work and defend for your country. That's really cool. And so he gets so much meaning from his job. But he doesn't get everything from that. He gets meaning from his marriage with me. And I've also realized, because I was like thinking about it, and I'm like, he gets meaning through like his hobbies and like the community that he's in. So I think that's another thing. Like sometimes meaning doesn't have to be this like huge big thing. It can literally be like, having a creative outlet, or having a social outlet, or having like an intellectual outlet. Like what is this thing that is like another part of your soul that needs to be nurtured? And I think like that's where taking care of a home gets kind of tricky sometimes, because it's like you're so and then that kid's on top of it, like you're going to be so committed to taking care of your kids and getting around everyone else's schedule. Your personal like wants can kind of go to the wayside. And so for me, like just trying to think of like, okay, to fill this other time, because like honestly I can't just clean all day, I can't just cook all day, like that's not enough for me. I need some other sort of like some sort of creative or intellectual outlet to go to. And it could be as simple as reading. And I know it's hard, especially again with like the stay-at-home moms. Like, okay, yeah, like I would love to have like an outlet for myself, but like I have kids all day that I have to take care of. And it's like, I just heard a mom the other day say that she gets up early so that she can go work out and have her alone time. So she purposely gets up early so that she can like have a cup of coffee, go work out, and not be bothered by her kids. Now, that's not going to work for everyone, but I'm just kind of giving it as an example. Maybe it's like you read a really interesting book at the end of the night, kids have bedtimes. Make them go to bed. um, but it's just like there are ways to do it, and I know like I have a lot more leisure than someone that had would have kids. Um, but it is possible to figure it out, and I think it's important to figure it out because you do need something that's just for you. You need something that serves what that, value needs or meaning needs for you. So, just to kind of dig into this deeper, I guess, I wanted to give examples of the media's portrayal of housewives. I hope you're familiar with at least one of these ideas. I think you will be. But I'm just like thinking about like some, very popular housewives, and most of them are kind of depicted as like, I don't know, like not bad. Like, I don't want to say like that, but it's just like not very desirable necessarily. Like, they don't make being a housewife seem like a great thing, which I think is kind of interesting. Um, but the first person I want to talk about is Charlotte from Sex and the City. So, as we know, if you've watched the show, Charlotte, when she's first introduced in the show, she is a curator for an art gallery. Really cool job, right? It's super fancy, awesome New York job. Um, really good at her job. And then she gets married, and Charlotte's very traditional, and she wants that family unit. And, they joke about her being a wasp and everything on the show. But when she goes to her friends to kind of tell them of what she's doing because she's getting ready to plan for her family and she wants to like get their house in order and all of this before that happens, which is totally understandable. Um, Her three best friends really judge her. Um, she talks about, passing by this pottery place where she sees people in the window, and Carrie tells her, it's fine if you want to stay at home, but if I saw you in that pottery window, I would just keep walking. Like, I'd feel sad for you. And then, of course, like Miranda, who's very much like feminist, we have the right to work, you should work kind of mentality, just totally thinks it's ludicrous that she would quit her job before even getting pregnant. And I don't think Samantha really has too much of an opinion about it. I think she just kind of thinks Charlotte's silly in general. So they're just on opposite worlds. She's in no position to judge, right? But it's kind of obvious that she's also kind of like, why would you do that? Like, you have such a great job. And so none of these women understand. And Charlotte goes in the show, and she kind of has like a tough run at it being a stay-at-home wife. Taking her pretty much the rest of the series to get pregnant, and they really drive the narrative around the fact that like that's the only reason why she did it. But it's like, why is it sad if she wanted to go and like make pottery? Just because she had a really cool job beforehand doesn't make her any less intelligent. It doesn't make her any less independent. It just, she's come to a point in her life where she puts so much time and energy into her job that she realized this is no longer satisfying me now. Like, I'm married, I have this wonderful life, like, and I'm trying to make it better. And why is this something that I need to do? And all throughout the show, they really struggle like with her character because she's constantly like trying to look for work again, like can't get a job, so she like volunteers and all of that. And it's just like her constantly like basically trying to find meaning because she put so much of her self-worth into just a few things. And it's just like the reality of it is somebody like Charlotte, who would be so fortunate to live in a scenario like that, like, why shouldn't she want those things? And why wouldn't her friends want to be supportive of those? The next person I want to talk about is Betty Draper from Mad Men. Mad Men, I mean, you get so many versions of housewives because of the era of the show and just different sort of scenarios. But I love Betty because in the first season, they give her this kind of like nervous tick of her hand shaking, and they end up, sending her to a psychologist. And by the second season, she's kind of figured out basically she's just bored. Like, both of her children are in school. At that time, they don't have the little baby. So, her role as like a mother is starting to change, and she has more time on her hands. And it's like, yeah, just, maybe sitting at home smoking cigarettes, drinking wine, and gossiping with your friends isn't as fulfilling as, having other stuff going on around you. And so, again, they kind of make her like seem like she's a little aloof and naive and all of that. But then as you get into the second season, we see her riding horses. And now she's found a hobby to kind of like, her own personal outlet. And, even her daughter is kind of trying to like encroach on that. Like, why can't I go riding with you? And she's like, well, it's, too dangerous right now. But reality of it is, if Betty was a real person, Betty's like, no, I don't want you to come riding with me. Like, this is mommy time, Um, so again, it's like they kind of make it seem like in the show that like being a housewife like was just part of the time, and you see everybody in their little roles. But when you really look at it, like again, those women were so fortunate to have the homes that they had. And I mean, granted, their husbands were all a bunch of cheaters, but I'm going to guess a lot of that is like, yeah, maybe that was happening during the time. I'm sure it was, but it happens today too. Even if you have a job, it happens. But like also, these women like, sorry, I got on a cheating tangent there. I hate cheaters. No, but my point is like, I'm sure there were a lot of happy homes, or I'm sure there were a lot of women that were very satisfied. And it's like, they used to do stuff back then too. They used to have a lot of like community for women to go and like, sit around and knit, or have different like legions and stuff for women to get involved in the community and do meaningful work, to do stuff and like dedicate their time or whatever they had to not just their home, to be able to have other outlets. And so as much of the show kind of like, again, this is on the housewife in some sort of way, because you're just sitting there being like, oh, these poor, naive, innocent women, and they have no idea what their husbands are up to. It's also like, take that out of the scenario. Like, they have a pretty nice setup, right? They all have beautiful homes, nice things, and they kind of get to do whatever they want. And so then the third one, I'm sure you guys have all heard of this. I think one of the most hilarious housewives was Lucy from I Love Lucy. I was thinking about it, like, on the show, they always have her getting into, different shenanigans, right? Her and Ethel are always getting into trouble together. And I realized, I'm like, her one thing that she really wanted to do was work at the club with Ricky. She wanted to do something like, put me in the show, Ricky, right? And so it's like, God, if Ricky would have just given her something to do there so that she could, like, obviously she enjoyed the nightlife. She enjoyed, like, her person, if we want to think of, and obviously these are all fictional, but, like, if we want to think of Lucy as, like, a real person, like, she's a showwoman. Like, she enjoys entertaining and, being kind of the center of attention. It's like, if he would have tried to, like, help her and find a role in that to, like, get some of that energy out, give her some more meaning outside of just their home, she probably wouldn't have gotten in all the trouble that she got into. And so, she wouldn't have to sneak around his back all the time. But I think part of her doing that, and part of Ethel kind of helping her in her shenanigans, was that they both were just, staying at home. And so, again, there's only so much you can do, Once your daily chores are over, sitting around and smoking cigarettes and gossiping only takes you so far. Like, you might need to find other meaning in something. And, Ricky's working at a club. He's working out, like, working late nights and all this. Like, I can only imagine why she would get in all these shenanigans, because she's trying to find something more for herself, and she's trying to, with what her values are, create something that's Lucy's and not, just for their family. So yeah, I just think that like it's kind of funny because again, society kind of has this weird view towards housewives, and God forbid you just say you're just a housewife. You know, everyone's like, "Oh, that's not all you do," and it's like, "Well, yeah, that's what I do now. Like I am a housewife." I've kind of fought it for a while, but um, I put a post on my social media earlier this week about just being tired of rambling on. It's like most people can just kind of be like, "Yeah, I work in finance," or "I'm a teacher," or whatever, And it's like, oh, okay, there might be a few follow up questions, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Me, I feel like I have to give my entire like professional resume to, justify that, like, oh, I'm not just a housewife. And it's just like, why can't I just be a housewife? Like, this is an awesome opportunity in my life. There might be a day where I have to work again. There might be a day when I want to work again. I have hustled and I have worked really hard for so many years on my own. Like, why not take this time to kind of just be and actually like figure out myself and who I want to be? So I just think it's kind of funny that like society and the media really depict housewives as kind of the more naive, man dependent sort of women. And in reality, and even within the shows themselves, the women aren't that at all. They are very smart, they're very independent. And yes, they, have these relationships with the men because they're their husbands, but you see how that relationship is so much different than like the other relationships that are depicted on television shows, where a lot of times the jobs get in the way, or the job takes precedence and there's friction in the house. And I want to say, like, women who work, obviously, that was me. I assume it'll probably be me at another time in my life again. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. And it's great that you can do that. And I hope it really works for you guys and your family. I am definitely speaking to housewives here. And again, trying to just be a voice that, like, even though, like, it seems like we don't do anything, we are doing things. It's really fun to do those things. And it's not like we're just kind of like mindless little like trophy wives, right? We're supporting our husband, and there's a lot of value in that. And it's just something that society doesn't want to acknowledge for some reason. I don't like, I'm so happy for like the progress women have made, but at the same time, it's just like we've made so much progress so that we can make choices and that we don't have to do what men tell us to do. This is now a modern day housewife. This is somebody, I'm not somebody that was told I have to do this, right? I'm somebody that chose this. If I wanted to go out and get a job, I could. It might be a little difficult in Okinawa because jobs are a little scarce here, but I have a friend, she needed a job. She's like, I am not a stay-at-home mom. Like, love my kids, but I need stimulation in a work environment. That's awesome that she knows that about herself, right? Um, Most people are like, you can't get a job here. She figured it out. She got herself a job. So that was so cool. But like, for me, I'm just like, I don't need to do that. I don't want to stress about a job that I don't give a shit about. Like, the next time I get a job and I have all the stresses and the things that come along with it, I want it to really mean something for me in that way. And like, now having this time to just kind of like sit back and like figure myself out, I know where my boundaries will be too if I'm in that scenario again. And I know what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. Um, so, uh, yeah, and yeah. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. I just am, again, thankful for this time. I'm not like, I'm trying really hard to be this voice for someone that is like me, that has, found themselves in this scenario, whether by choice, not by choice, whatever this, you want to be in this scenario, whatever it is. I think that it's amazing that us as women, we have so many options. But whatever you decide to do, it's also really important that you find other meaningful things in your life. Your job should not be the only thing that has meaning to you. No matter how interesting or helpful. Like, I had a really cool job, and it was fun to talk about. And I think that was part of the reason, too, I identified with it so much, because I could tell these personal stories that happened to me in this world that not a lot of people get to be in. And it's just like, now I kind of look back on it, it's just like, well, that story could have happened to anybody that worked in my industry. And, who cares? Like, it's just a story, it's not actually, other than something kind of fun to talk about, like, it's not really who I am. And so I think that, like, it's just important to kind of figure out where your meaning in life is and to find different things that help that. And I will say that, again, it's kind of funny that I named this the Bored Housewife, because not only was it more meaning that I was seeking, it wasn't so much, trying to conquer boredom. But then as soon as I started this, and now I have my creative outlet, this little hole that I've been trying to fill, all of that went away. It's like, I'm busy now all of a sudden. It's like, because I gave myself something else to do. So whatever it is, if it's a hobby, if it's, a more intellectual thing, if it's a community that you surround yourself with, going to church, getting into, like, intramurals, like, whatever it is, just something that can kind of, like, help you figure out something else about yourself and just add more value to your life and more meaning. So anyways, that's about it, guys. Please like, comment, subscribe. Again, if you're interested, go to the link in the description and hit the tab for my website. There is the Bored Housewife tab that you can scroll down and enter your email address to subscribe for the monthly emails. And again, those emails are just kind of going to be like an overview of the month and some different things that I'll maybe talk about either through the past month or the new month. And then also there's another tab called the TBH blog. I don't have any blogs up there yet, but once I do, then you can also sign up for the email list for that, and I'll send out basically like the new blog every time. The blog post every time I do that. And I'm thinking that'll be about maybe 1 or 2 a month, so not too much, crap for your email, your inbox. But yeah, I guess I just really appreciate everyone who's been watching and listening, especially over the last year. This has definitely been about a year now since we started this. And I'm just really excited for the new direction I'm taking it in. It's really fun to relate to people this way, and so yeah, having a good time. Anyways, cheers, guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.